Good day, students and teachers. I am Ian Mar Gabriel D. Aguila, but you can call me Kuya IMG. I am a BS Mathematics and Science teaching student at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where I am majoring in biology. And I am also the biology modules creator here at the Filipino Science Hub. And today, I will be the one to teach you some biology concepts. Good day, students and teachers. I am Mr. Ian Mar Gabriel D. Aguila, but you can call me Kuya IMG. I am a BS Mathematics and Science teaching student at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where I am majoring in biology. And I am also the biology modules creator here at the Filipino Science Hub. And today, I will be the one to teach you some biology concepts. So our topic for today is all about the relationship between population growth and carrying capacity. This is a topic specifically catering our grade 10 students. Before we start, let us first determine the content standards and the MELCs, or the most essential learning competency that the students should be able to execute after this lesson. For the content standards, the learners demonstrate an understanding of an ecosystem as being capable of supporting a limited number of organisms. Our MELCs requires the students at the end of this lesson to explain the relationship between population growth and carrying capacity. So let's start. While we are discussing the concepts here, these are the key questions that the students should know the answer after our lesson. First, what are the limiting factors that affect population growth? Second, how does population growth affect the carrying capacity of an ecosystem? Please take note of those questions, and to stir up your imaginations, please observe the pictures presented on the slide. Look at this one. What do you see? How about this one? If you're thinking about the concept of population based from two pictures, you're right. Good day, students and teachers. I am Ian Mar Gabriel D. Aguila, but you can call me Kuya IMG. I am a BS Mathematics and Science teaching student at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where I am majoring in biology. I am also the biology modules curator here at the Filipino Science Hub. And today, I will be the one to teach you some biology concepts. So our topic for today is all about the relationship between population growth and carrying capacity. This is a topic specifically catering our grade 10 students. Before we start, let us first determine the content standards and the MELCs, or the most essential learning competency that the student should be able to execute after this lesson. For the content standards, the learners demonstrate an understanding of an ecosystem as being capable of supporting a limited number of organisms. Our MELCs requires the students at the end of this lesson to explain the relationship between population growth and carrying capacity. So let's start. While we are discussing the concepts here, these are the key questions that the student should know the answer after our lesson. First, what are the limiting factors that affect population growth? Second, how does population growth affect the carrying capacity of an ecosystem? Please take note of the questions, and to stir up your imaginations, please observe the pictures presented on the slide. So look at this one. What do you see? Okay, next. How about this one? So if you're thinking about the concept of population based from the two pictures, You're right. Specifically, we will deal with how the population increases in number, which is also called the population growth. Population growth has two types, the exponential growth and the logistic growth. We will deal first with the exponential population growth. As you can see from the picture, this type of growth can grow at geometric or exponential rates given that there are abundant resources. There is also a rapid growth which was caused by a higher birth rate than death rate. To easily visualize this population growth, this forms a J-shaped curve, as you can see from the graph. One good example of this type of growth is the growth of bacteria. Bacteria replicate by splitting one cell into two cells, a mechanism known as binary fission. In as early as 20 minutes, fission happens. In an ideal circumstances, a single bacterium could multiply into over 1 billion bacteria in just 10 hours. So imagine that. That is one type of exponential population growth. The other type of population growth where the rate of growth decreases and gradually slows down as resources are depleted is called logistic population growth. In logistic population growth stops when it reaches the carrying capacity of the environment. Unlike the J-shaped curve of the exponential type, this growth follows a sigmoidal or S-shaped growth curve. One example of this type of growth is the growth of harbor seals. A natural population of seals shows real-world fluctuation leading to a logistic growth. We said earlier the concept of carrying capacity, but what do we really mean by this concept? So that carrying capacity is the number of individuals of a particular population that the environment can support. This also refers to the population size at which growth stops. For you to clearly understand this concept, here are some of its examples. So one indication of carrying capacity in motion is overgrazing. Farmers must avoid allowing cattle to overgraze. So as you can see, here is the picture of the cattle because overgrazing will take a long time for nutrients to return to the soil and grasses to regrow after a field has been overgrazed. In the meantime, the field has exhausted its carrying capacity and no new cattle can be brought in. Perhaps the carrying capacity has even been surpassed if the area cannot fully support some of these existing cattle. Another example is the carrying capacity of the barnacles and oysters, which includes the factor of space. Another limiting factor is carrying ability of the space when a species runs out of room to live. For example, as you can see in the picture, the barnacles and oysters are clumped together and there are minimum or no space between them. The relationship between barnacles and oysters is discussed in the picture and are depicted in the picture. All land on rugged beaches and other rough surfaces, these barnacles struggle for food and space with settled oyster larvae as they arrive. So as you can see, here are the oysters and the barnacles. Barnacles struggle for food and space, and the amount of space on the hard surface determines the carrying capacities of both barnacle and oyster populations. And with the situations given, we can note that the environment limits population growth by changing birth and death rates caused by limiting factors such as overgrazing and lack of space. But there are many limiting factors that we will discuss further. So the limiting factors has two types. First is the density dependent factors and the density independent factors. The density-dependent limiting factor is the population growth. In this type of growth is influenced by population density. This is also known as regulating factor. This is any force that influences the size of a population of living things in response to population density or the number of individuals per unit area. Biological processes, rather than physical or chemical phenomena, are often the source of density-dependent factors. Some of the examples of density-dependent limiting factors include parasites, competition, as you can see, predation, diseases, and waste accumulation. And all of these are biological processes. Next, density-independent limiting factor. This is any force that influences the size of a population of living things regardless of its density. So unlike density-dependent, which is in its world itself, it is dependent on the population density. Density-independent were affected by human activities, natural disasters, and climate. So these are the physical and chemical phenomena rather than the biological phenomena, which often generate density-independent influences. So here are the examples. First one is the light. Next, pollution, temperature, and weather. But based on all that we have discussed, let us answer the question, what are the effects of carrying capacity to population growth? So when resources become limited, carrying capacity acts as a moderating force, slowing and eventually stopping the rate of growth. On the other hand, what happens if the population exceeds carrying capacity? So when the carrying capacity of an animal, plant, or human population is exceeded, deaths outnumber births. So there is higher death rate than birth rate. When the population exceeds its carrying capacity, the numbers also avoid fluctuating since it creates somehow a flat line on the graph. And that's all for our lecture part. We will now go to the teaching tips. So this is based from the K-12 learners module in science grade 10. So a lesson on these limiting factors and carrying capacity can be done differently depending on the kind of learners. So this is for the teachers. So for you teachers, a reading comprehension exercise can be offered to your visual learners or learners who like reading. So make sure that there are guide questions that will help them understand what they read and guide them in achieving the learning objectives. And for those learners that are auditory, slow readers, and challenged students, a multimedia presentation is important along with relevant evaluation resources such as activity sheets, guide questions, and so on. And for the advanced learners, we have sample web quests, and here are the list of the sites that you can use or you can give to your students. And we also have supplemental videos. So the first video is all about population regulation. And in this video, the students can learn the difference between density dependent and density independent factors. And this is the YouTube link below. You can also give this to your students. And for the supplemental video number 2, the title is Ecological Carrying Capacity, Biology. And here we will discuss, or here the carrying capacity is discussed, and the link is right below here. And for another tip, I have created a concept map. So this concept map shows the different ideas under the population dynamics. And as you can see in the picture, there are 3 major parts of population dynamics: population regulation, population growth, which we are discussing now, and the demographic factors. But we will focus only on the population growth and population regulation as it includes the concept of population growth, limiting factors, and carrying capacity. So the link is also provided. Just click it. And here is the picture or of the whole concept now. So as you can see, the population growth has 2 types: the exponential growth here, and the logistic growth. And on the population regulation part, we have the two types of limiting factors, the independent and the dependent one. And now we will go to the problem sets. So first we have our multiple choice type of questions. Unahin natin yung question number 1. An interaction in which two or more organisms seek the same resources at the same time is called A. Predation, B. Parasitism, C. Competition, D. Cannibalism. So the correct answer is competition. So because the three remaining choices does not involve the interaction of two or more organisms seeking the same resources completely, because predation, parasitism, and cannibalism involves the dominance of one or more type of organism. Second question, competition limits the blank. So the choices are A. Population size, B. Biosphere, C. Carrying capacity, and D. Biotic potential. So what is your answer? So if your answer is letter A, you're correct. So competition, of course, limits the population size, because if there are many organisms or species that are competing against each other, it will definitely affect their size. It can decrease or increase its population size. Next, if the number of owls in a forested area doubled in 10 years, then A, the owl population increased, B, the population density of owls increased, C, the competition among the owls for food increased, and D, all of the above are true. So what are your answer? What is your answer, Rad? So kung ang sagot mo ay letter D, all of the above, tama. All of these are correct. So if the number of owls are doubled in 10 years, of course, it is obvious na lumaki or tumaas yung population ng owls, and yung density, syempre, as the population number increases, the population density also increases. And with this, there is also a competition that will happen among the owls for food increased. And this is a natural behavior, since habang dumarami yung populasyon sa isang lugar, mas nagkakaroon or mas namumutawi dito yung competition, sapagkat mas nag-aagawan na sila sa mga resources, sa pagkain, sa tubig, and marami pang iba. Pang-apat, this is an example of density-dependent limiting factor. So here are the choices. A, a killing frost. B, drought. C, a tuberculosis epidemic. D, a new dawn. So if your answer is letter C, you're correct. And bakit C? Kasi yung frost, drought, and dam, all of them are density-independent limiting factor. Again, remember natin, kapag density-dependent, nakadepende siya sa biological processes or sa mismo forces or dun sa population density ng isang lugar. Kaya density dependent nga eh. Pero itong tatlo, kung mapapansin nyo, frost, drought, dam. So hindi naman sila biological processes. Rather, there are physical and chemical processes or phenomena. And yun yung big difference ng dalawa. Next, question number 5. This is a type of population growth that reaches its carrying capacity. The choices: A, geometric growth, B, logistic growth, C, exponential growth, and D, J-shaped growth curve. So if your answer is letter B, you're correct, logistic growth. So sa logistic, dito lamang yung may carrying capacity. And yung tatlo kasing choices dito, iisa lang sila, yung geometric, exponential, and J-shaped growth, iisa lang sila. So in general, they are exponential growth curve. And now we will go to the second part of our problem set. This is the dependent or independent. So pipili lang kayo kung ang situation na ibibigay natin ay dependent or independent limiting factor. So madali lamang to, sapagkat again, tandaan natin before we answer, nakadepende sa population density, and these are the biological processes such as parasites, competition, and other factors na merong biological processes. Next, independent, hindi siya nakadepende sa population density and more on the physical and chemical processes to, mga weather, light, pollution, so ganun. So number 1, herd of goats grazing on a grassland. So is it density dependent limiting factor or density independent limiting factor? If your answer is density dependent limiting factor, you're correct. And ang factor na to ay competition. Tama. Sapagkat kapag dumarami na yung goats natin na nag-graze sa isang grassland lang, nagkakaroon sila ng competition. Kasi dumadami na yung populasyon, mas dumadami na din yung demand ng mga hayop or ng goat sa resources. Next, situation 2, Taal volcano eruption. If your answer is density independent limiting factor, you're correct because this is a natural disaster. Okay, now we will proceed to situation number 3. Accumulation of toxic waste products in a bacterial culture. If your answer is density dependent limiting factor, you're also correct because ito yung waste accumulation natin. And remember, yon biological processes nga siya. And yung accumulation ng toxic waste sa bacterial culture is a normal process. Next, the oil spill in Cavite area which harmed many aquatic organisms. If your answer is density independent factor, such as pollution, tama. Kasi ito ay isang uri ng chemical phenomena na naka-harm sa aquatic organisms sa Cavite area. Next, situation 5, nakapapanahon. COVID-19 transmission. If your answer is density dependent limiting factor, tama. Sapagkat ito ay nabibilang sa factor na diseases. Next, 6.8 magnitude earthquake in Southwest Davao. If your answer is density independent limiting factor, you're correct. This is a form of natural disaster such as the Taal volcano eruption. So ito yung hindi hawak o hindi nakadepende sa population density sapagkat ito ay natural disaster, isang physical phenomena, geophysical phenomena ng ating mundo. Next and last, an increase in population of house lizards in Barangay Himpot causes a decrease in population of mosquitoes. So if your answer is density dependent limiting factor, you're correct because this is under the relationship called predation. So syempre, habang tumataas yung bilang ng mga butiki, so maraming kakain na mga lamok sa paligid. So bababa talaga ang populasyon ng mga lamok dito sa lugar na to. So yun lamang. Thank you for your listening, and for more biology topics, discussions, just visit all of these links. Maalin pala dito sapagkat itong mga links na to ay makapagbibigay sa inyo ng mga karagdagan pang impormasyon, hindi lang sa biology kundi sa different fields pa ng science such as chemistry and physics. So, nandito na, meron tayong website, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So, sa mga may TikTok dyan, mga estudyante and teacher, paki-follow na lang po ng ating account. Yun lamang po. Muli ako si Kuya IMG. Maraming salamat at ito ang PhilSci Hub.